It is my privilege and joy that we can continue our Bible study in Lessons of Faith from the book of Joshua. Today we have the subtitle, Memorials of Grace. We have seen that the story of Joshua is the story of faith. Of course, the whole Bible has stories of faith, but here in this study we want to understand faith very, very clear. Faith is only an action of a spirit. A body cannot believe. So a spirit lives and functions based on the processing of information. The information must meet his needs. Thoughts are the means by which the spirit processes information. In order to form thoughts from words, writings, images, experiences, he needs a measure. And that what takes in the information is called faith. So there is no way to assimilate information except by faith, like there is no way to assimilate an apple except by eating it. So faith is the taking in of information. But there is also a fake faith that is called presumption, that also takes information in. And the main difference between faith and presumption is on whom the Spirit trusts, if he has an objective measure or if he has a subjective measure. Thinking is weighing. And you must have some clear objective measure that you know that what you weigh is correct. So, like we weigh bananas or any other things, and we need a measure for it. So, for our information, in order to assimilate it, we have first to have an objective orientation by which we then go to act in faith. Faith takes time into account, while presumption does not consider the time in which the words are said. Faith takes into account the local circumstances. Presumption ignores the local circumstances. Like some people believe still that they have to keep the ceremonial law or the circumcision because they believe those things are still there for us to be kept. They ignore the local circumstances. And they act, and they do. But what they do is not faith, it's presumption. So where is the problem in the human spirit? We were created to be a channel, a creature that is in need for love, that must assimilate from God and share it with the environment. Through the change of the identity, believing now that we are a creator, we start giving. And we're not even aware that that is a deception and it's wrong. When you ask a child about between 8 and 12 years old, and even adult people, you may hear the answer. When you ask them, where does love come from? They will say spontaneously, from the heart. That means, I am the originator, I am the creator of love. That's why when God says in the Bible, you should love the Lord with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy might, they believe they have to give something to God. They have to give to the environment. Now they give from themselves, and so they need to receive for them something back. And so they want something back from the others. That's selfishness, and that's how we function subconsciously in the false order of things. So deception is nothing else at the bottom line than changing the order. And so we find here that God made the way that we should process information to have an order that comes first. And that comes first trust and then faith. So trust leads to faith, not the other way around. And since the error causes the order to be reversed, we now put faith instead of trust. So we switch the order. But in reality, like this is not possible. This also is not possible. It is an illusion. So let us once again understand clearly what is the content of trust. The content of trust is an information that you do not have to believe. That means it is something that is self-explanatory. It's a fact. It requires no faith because it's visible. It's there. It is an available thing, and it belongs in the past. It happened. So because it happened, because it's evident, it's there, you trust it, because that's how trust has to have a content. An unchangeable, clear, absolute content. Faith is an information you cannot trust on, because it is in the future. It is not yet a fulfilled fact. It's future. That's why the Apostle Paul says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It's something that goes in the future. You hope it. We hope that Jesus is coming soon. We trust that his word will be fulfilled because we saw that other words of him have been fulfilled. So that's the evidence on which we trust to believe that he's coming soon again. What happens if the order is switched? We saw last time that that's a terrible confusion, even though in reality it cannot be switched. It is just switched by deception. So we saw last time Rahab, the woman of Jericho. She had some facts. Crossing the Red Sea of the people of Israel, the Amorite king were killed, and maybe others examples that she heard of. Those are things that happened. She trusts them because they are self-evident. But they must have an origin, and the origin of them is not human. So she trusts God from where they come. And now she believes, I'm also doomed to death. Why? Because it is said that they will come and take the land and will destroy those who live in the land. So she believes in the future that it will affect her. This brings her into a problem. She wants to live. It's the opposite to her need. And so she needs to do something in order to save her life. And so she does something. She takes the opportunity. These strangers came to her. She knew they were the spies of the people of Israel. She knew them. From where? Well, from their externals, maybe from their message that they had to her, because the Bible doesn't say anything about their conversations. However, she wants to live. And because she wants to live, she exercises trust in God and believes in the future that these people will come. And so she asks to be saved, her and her whole family. And she has success. Yes, she uses a human method, but in her heart, she trusts God and believes his word, and also his messengers that bring his word. And she does what she needs to do. She puts that thing into her window, that sign who she is. And by this sign, she is saved. Not the sign itself, but her trust and her faith. Now, we have also other people that hear about the things that come on them. They know the facts. The drought of the Red Sea, the Amorite kings, how they go and are killed, and they even know Jericho and Ai were destroyed. And here in chapter 9, from verse 1, it says, "And it came to pass, when all the kings which were on this side of Jordan, in the hills and in the valleys, and in all the coasts of the great sea over against Lebanon, the Hittite and the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite heard thereof, that they gathered themselves together to fight with Joshua and with Israel with one accord." So they have an information. They have the facts. Those facts really happened. They are nothing that they can put them aside. And they trust in it. But they trust that it's the actions of humans. They don't see God behind it. And so, even though their faith is that they are doomed to death, or they are in danger of death, even though they believe that it affects them as well, their consequence, because they want to live, they go by their need, is that they believe they can conquer them because they're humans. So they do something. They unite. And they think in a common force, they will win against the Israelites. So they put their trust in humans, and they believe in themselves that even though these people are coming, we will overcome them. Did they have success? We know there was no success in their action. But there was another tribe of people, the Gibeonites. They heard the same things. They witnessed the same situation, and they consider to do something else. So they have the same facts. They have the reason. They have that in their consciousness, the going through the Red Sea, the Amorite kings killed, Jericho was taken and destroyed. And here they say, what shall we do? They trust in that what they see that happened. But they realize that behind this action, it is not a human. They see that these works are divine. So they don't trust humans, but they trust that these works come from God. And so they say to them, verse 24, after then came out that they had been cheating. Because it was certainly told thy servants, how that the Lord thy God commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and to destroy all the inhabitants of the land from before you. Therefore we were sore afraid of our lives because of you, and have done these things. So they believed that it affects them. They believed that they will get in trouble. They believed that we are also dedicated to die. But we want to live. We want to live. So what do? The will now needs to do something. And these people have a strategy. And I like their strategy. They act similar than Rahab. They say, if we are doomed to death, but we want to live, how can we survive? When the Ninevites got the message, in 40 days, you will be destroyed. They had to do something with that information. They did not trust that it was Jonah who told them the message. They trust in God that he told them the message. And so they believed his words. But they said, we want to live. And so they did something that changed the course of their life. They repented. They changed that, and so they became people who were saved because they used their reason, their choice of grace. Because here is our salvation. Here in reason, in consciousness, where we can make conscious decisions based on what we consciously trust and what we consciously believe. Because our heart trusts and believes unconsciously the wrong. So, the Gibeonites resume to a plan. And I like people who do plans to save their lives. Because would you just say like that? I mean, the Hittite and the others, they say, we will take more arms. But if you trust humans, you may make more arms and trust your guns and your instruments of fight. But they don't do that. And what they do, is clear. And they said unto Joshua, We are thy servants. And Joshua said unto them, Who are ye, and from whence come ye? So they want to live. And it's clear. The need for life has been put in us by God. And now, if you want to live, but you see the danger, you need to do something. Because you cannot just die. The one people go and make their arms and want to fight with the human force because they trust in them and they trust in humans. Now the Gibeonites don't trust in them and in humans. They trust that things will be like God has said them and made them in the past, so that they trusted and believed His word. But yet they don't want to die. And so they recur to a council. And the elders here gather together and they make a plan and say so. And then the inhabitants of Gibeon heard that Joshua had done unto Jericho and unto Ai. They did work willingly and went and made as if they had been ambassadors, and took old sacks upon their asses, and wine bottles old and rent, and bound them up, and old shoes and clothes upon their feet, and old garments upon them, and all the bread of their provision was dry and moldy. And they went to Joshua and to the camp at Gilgal, and said unto him and to the men of Israel, We be come from a far country, now therefore make ye a league with us. And the men of Israel said unto the Hivites, Peradventure ye dwell among us, and how shall we make a league with you? And they said unto Joshua, We are thy servants. And Joshua said unto them, Who are ye? And from whence come ye? And they said unto him, From a very far country thy servants are come, because of the name of the Lord thy God, for we have heard the fame of him, and all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites that were beyond Jordan, to Sihon king of Heshbon, and Og king of Bashan, which was at Ashtaroth. So, wherefore our elders and all the inhabitants of our country spake to us, saying, Take victuals with you for the journey, and go to meet them, and say unto them, We are your servants, therefore now make ye a league or a covenant with us. So, they want to survive by a covenant. They want to survive by getting to Joshua and the king and the children of Israel, by making them to believe they are strangers far away. Because if they are present, they know they come to destroy. They won't let anyone here. And so they must be from very far, so that there is no danger for them. And so they do this, that they make this plan. And their plan succeeded. But it succeeded just because Joshua and the elders did a mistake. However, Joshua and the elders, they were having born-again people. They had the Holy Spirit in their heart, so they were bound to God and bound to humans in those areas where they did not overcome yet their deception. Now these people come and they see the facts of the old bread, the old clothes, and the shoes. And they have these facts, they are there in their conscience, all that is there. Now, they trust what they see, because it's a fact. But now, in verse 14 it says, And the men took their victuals, and asked not counsel at the mouth of the Lord. Why? Well, their trust was in humans. And they thought it would be fine, like they are in their mind. It was no danger for them in reality. So they believed their words. If you trust them, you believe their words, that they come from our country. And they asked for a covenant. But they came to give you some good things. I mean, they brought you that victuals, and now what do? And so because they trusted in humans and believed the human words, their will made the alliance. Of course, the alliance were not one-to-one in that way that they were... the alliance was they were servants and Joshua was still, and the people of Israel, so to say, higher than they were. But then when it came out that they were just there, close by, and the people want to kill them as well as the others, they had to stop that. Because there was this alliance. Yes, they remained servants, but they saved their life. So it's important for us to understand how trust and faith works together. Whom you trust, the one you believe. And we also need to know how serious alliances are or covenants. Because you might remember when Saul later killed some of the Gibeonites, God had to revenge that. And David had to give 7 men from the ancestors of Saul. And from the 7 men from the children of Saul, his relatives, in order to be executed for that breaking that covenant. So God takes covenants very serious. The Gibeonites remained in that place, and they were servants and helped even by the rebuilding of the temple. So faith, or trust and faith, worked beautiful for some, and in others some did fail. But we are in a growing experience in order to get to the point where we are fully trusting God, and then we will believe only His words and not the words of humans. In our lesson today, we have the crossing of the Jordan. It's also a lesson of faith, where the Ark of the Covenant had to come first. When they put their feet in, the water stopped, and the whole congregation went through. Joshua erected memorials, 12 stones in the midst here where they were standing before, and 12 outside as a memorial of remembrance. Those are facts on which you trust in order to believe and be one with God. I hope we understand these clear messages, how we have to trust and how we have to believe. And remember, Him whom you trust, you also must believe. May God help us that we learn that lesson, to trust the absolute, the evident God, and believe His words, His promises, which are future for us. But when we believe them, we live them by faith now, and one day we'll see reality. I'm looking forward to that day. Amen.